Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Flow Getter Show. We are your hosts, the Erica and the Lisa.
We're
And
Canadian today.
we're Canadian. Hey, nature show
Hey.
hosts. Yeah. Um, welcome to the Flow Getter Show. Hey. So today we're going to talk about this crazy thing called awakening out of the matrix, which really just means awakening to who you really are and loving yourself. That's really what that means. It's not all sci-fi. There isn't a conspiracy. It's just a transformational event. And we're going to talk about it today. So, Erica, I know we talked about this before the show, but I'll just kind of start us off a little bit. So, basically, what we said is you as a being, not you, but the proverbial you, is like you come in from the spiritual realm into a little body, it grows, and you get conditioned to your culture and humanity, which is why we came here to have the experiences. And then maybe at some point in your life, you transition out of that conditioning into finding who you really are, what you're all about, and getting more into the truths that resonate with you. And one experience that I've had a lot is I'm sometimes hide myself because I'm don't want people to see the real me because I'm surrounded by it's sort of like you're the only one that's awakened and everybody else is they're like, here, you should only, be like us, don't be like you, kind of thing. And so it's easy to hide yourself. And then also you get made fun of. I've been made fun of like a lot my whole life. And I'm not going to say it's traumatic, but I do have a little chip on my shoulder sometimes about that, I'll admit, right?
Yeah.
Screw you person. So letting that go. However, so I kind of wanted to just kind of talk about all these things about basically conditioning and strengthening yourself, even though you're getting, flack and pushback from it. And just all that and kind of your story and my story and all that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, everybody. Let's dive in. All right.
So I have a question for you.
Oh,
what, this idea of conditioning, what are your thoughts around it?
Wow. It's a good question. Oh, there's a fly. So conditioning. I feel like everybody, so the human animal, it's where the brain is set up to basically hypnotize you. Like animals have to learn how to, like the lion cub has to learn how to hunt. So it just sort of gets hypnotized and its parents or teaches them. So it's all valuable. Parents and your society or their intentions are to keep you alive, essentially. I think it goes wrong. It's like helpful at some point because it's how we survived. We came together and we're like, okay, let's do these things. But I think as we can see in our society right now, the conditioning isn't really working anymore. The cracks are starting to show. And conditioning, I guess, to me means set of beliefs and perspectives that you're supposed to have. And then that sort of dictates all your choices and how you're supposed to feel about things.
Okay.
Just to start, I could go on for an hour, but what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's good. It's interesting because I see positive pros and cons to the conditioning.
Okay.
I think we do come here to, and maybe conditioning isn't the word that some people would use to describe the idea of we come here to gain new learnings, to gain new things in order to become more wise, in order to, we just kind of, as we live life, we pick up these things, and we pick up good things and we pick up not good things. But it's all to help us. Even the not good things are here to help us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So, for me, when I think of conditioning, I think of, I always think it's funny. I think of human design because that's kind of the one word that they use a lot. When I learned that, it was just a word that kept coming up. And so from that, I learned, okay, yeah, we're almost here to be conditioned and then deconditioned,
Yeah.
but keep the stuff that works for us.
Exactly. Yeah. And you taught me that.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. It was sort of like, yeah, you want to be conditioned for a period of time because you learn when you come out of that cocoon.
Yeah. Right. It's like you get to, it's almost like you get to, it's interesting because conditioning isn't the same thing as being offered a buffet of options. It's like conditioning is more like this, it's almost more like brainwashing in a way.
Yeah. But
So,
even parents with the best intentions, let's say we suddenly now with all our wisdom started raising babies, we'd be like, no, think this. And they'd be like, because you're still imprinting your values on somebody else, even if you think they're the right values. And of course, everyone thinks they're right. So that's why they're doing it. So
that's right. That's exactly, you're exactly right. Yeah. And the thing is, I think as we get older it is hard. I think, especially as a parent, when you are so fiercely protective and you want to make sure your kid's gonna, on the right path. And, so I understand that. But also understanding that the more options you can give your child and let them know kind of what we were talking about in our previous podcast about teaching your kids to trust their own instincts and their own intuition, because that's where it's at. When you my intuition instincts might be totally different than my kids, and we, we'll be on two different paths and they're both right. So I think as a parent, sometimes it's hard, especially when your kid, it's like looking to you for guidance, up to a certain point.
Yeah. Off and on.
Yeah. Or you see your kid get themselves into trouble. Yeah. And then you're like, I told you to do it this way, or, whatever. But interesting. Yeah. So this is a great conversation.
I love it. Okay. So, all right. So let's first talk about the fear of, like, when you start to realize, in some people it happens at a much younger age, some people it's when they're older, or it's sort of hiding piece of, okay, it's almost like if there's some situations where, okay, I feel this way, but I have to sort of join a different philosophy or a group or something to get that validation first, where I'm not a whole, I'm testing it out. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to join these types of people. And whether it's just mentally you're joining or you're literally joining groups and things like that. But then what I'm loving right now in my wisdom years here is that I now am picking and choosing what resonates with me. I'm not just signing up for, oh, this person says all of this and I'm just going to drink all of their Kool-Aid. I'm like, no, I'll take a drop of their Kool-Aid and a drop of this Kool-Aid and a drop of my Kool-Aid and, put all my Kool-Aids together. And it's my own Kool-Aid. And I know that's a horrible analogy because that was really tragic. But so Charlie Knight's own. But the point being is that there's this, I think it goes through this metamorphosis phase, like anything where you're totally just doing everything with the people around you. And then you get more plugged into people outside of your group. You're like, oh, this health guru or this philosophy, like I'm into this stuff now. And then, college is a huge time for people to do that. And then like over time, you're still plugging in, trying different things. But the best part, and I can't wait till everyone gets here, is where you just completely separate from all of it in terms of your like security or feeling insecure about it. And you're just like, I know what's best for me. And it's back to trusting your own instincts. And it resonates a little bit with each of those things, but not entirely. And it's your own resonation and your own synthesis of it. And then that feels like, oh, now I really feel like I'm awakening. Like you're awakening a little bit. And awakening, meaning you're awake. I think you said this, awake to your true self. So that's super fun. But I think in the process, it's like you don't want to judge anybody along that trail, but that's where the diet wars happen or the political war. These people are still trying to figure out where they land, so they get really defensive. Well, no, this person, that what they say is right. But like when you're completely in your own space, you don't argue about anything, because you're like, yeah, you do you, I'm doing me. Like you don't feel the need to do that. Yeah. So and I historically, I feel like along my journey, I was judgy, and then also I was judged by other people. So that was law of attraction reflection, which was, oh, you're this, and I get made fun of or whatever. So I was judging others that they weren't doing the right thing, and they were judging me because I probably maybe made them have to think about the choices they were making. And so it was this sort of cycle of judgment. And I think that's part of the process. I think it's just be aware of where you are along that process. And it's okay if you're still in the testing things out phase, but just try to tone down the judgment, because it's just going to slow down the part where you get to the total synthesis and total inner peace that I'm enjoying right now. I love it. Okay, the dog just came back in. Please hold. Going to be part of the podcast today. Yes.
Well, okay, sweetie.
We'll probably have to edit all this. All right. Okay, and we're back.
Hi.
I know. Can you just chill?
Or not? We'll just leave it because it's fun.
He is really cute.
He's super cute.
Okay, so that concludes my broad overview.
I love it.
Yeah.
What
are your deep thoughts about that whole process? How was that process for you? Was it the same type of journey? Were there steps that you skipped? Because when I met you, I remember you were just kind of like in that shed mode. You were like, woo. But I also know that you didn't really plug in to other people. You kind of just went straight to what you were all about, which I feel like you skipped. You didn't stay as long in that mode of the plug into others.
Well, I think it's interesting. I've noticed everyone's got varying levels and degrees of an innate knowing of their direction in life. Yeah. And I will say I'm probably on the side of not there's a fine line between direction and like tolerance. You know what I mean? In the way of, and I keep I'm sorry that I'm referencing human design, but this feels so it's because it makes so much sense that this
okay,
the way
and
that
maybe
they
give a little bit of an explanation for those who don't know what that is.
So human design is a tool similar to astrology, similar to numerology, similar to even like a Myers-Briggs type of way of understanding yourself. It's not a personality test. It's based on, like astrology, it's based on birth stuff, information. But it gives you a birth chart, and it's kind of, they call it kind of the next iteration of like the chakra system. So in the chakra system, there's 7 centers. In the in human design, there are 9, because we've evolved beyond just the 7. So when I think of our discussion in terms of human design, there are 2 centers. One's kind of it's a shape in the middle of the chart, and it's all about direction, love, and self-understanding. It's kind of really knowing who you are and your direction in life. And then there's another center. It's called the ego. They call it the ego in human design, but it's not. I guess it's sort of related, but it's essentially where your self-worth and self-esteem kind of come. And so let me backtrack. So each center can be defined, what they call defined or undefined. And then each center's got several different little gates. They call them gates. And each gate refers to a different kind of energy.
Okay.
So there's multiple gates in each center. So there's like 64 gates in the whole chart or something like that.
Crazy.
And so it's a ton. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So when you have a defined center, that means that there is a fixed kind of energy that lives in you, that you are made of. And so what I've noticed is people who have that fixed kind of self-direction and love and understanding of who they are, those people tend to, I've seen, and of course this is all generalization, but I've seen that those people tend to know earlier, like what's good for them and what's not. Like it's almost like you can't push those people off of their direction in life or their path in life.
Yeah.
Which
I think I've witnessed this too, when you used to do readings and the years that you spent studying it and all that kind of stuff. I think I could say that definitely, that trend makes a lot of sense.
Okay. And so on the other side, the people who don't have that fixed kind of energy are like you and I don't have that fixed energy. And so what you were saying really, I resonated with what you were saying, because I too, it's like because it's not fixed, you can almost adopt a direction from other groups, other people. And so it's almost like life is like this. It's like, oh, I'm going to try this outfit on, but that didn't really fit. I'm going to then try this outfit on. That doesn't really fit, but I'll keep like the shirt, but get rid of all the rest. Kind of like what you're saying, like the Kool-Aid, it's like, oh, I like the outfits
way better than Kool-Aid. Like the metaphor. Yes, let's for sure bring it back to fashion, because that's way more fun. So yes, love these earrings, keeping that. Get rid of the rest.
Yeah. I don't like your hair color. I like their hair color over there.
Gross.
So so you kind of like, so it's like you get to see, like it's that buffet of options kind of thing, where you get to see and try it on and keep what you like and ditch what you don't like. Whereas the other thing, when you were mentioning when you met me, it seemed like I didn't get stuck too long. And I think that's that ego thing where I, how do I describe
yours
that?
is filled in and mine isn't?
Yeah. It's sort of like that self-worth
my
thing.
Ego's strong too.
It's a really strong thing. It really is. And I know it's interesting because I've seen how my own egoic energy from the human design perspective affects other people. It's strong and powerful. And I've become more and more aware of just how it can really be overwhelming for people. The flip side is that when you have it open like you have, there is a depth of empathy and understanding and compassion that is so deep. It's, for me, like when empathy, I'm definitely learning. I'm much better at it than I ever have been before. That said, it's more cerebral for me. It's not because I feel somebody else's, struggles so much. It's more that I can see it. And then it triggers a reaction. Like I'm like, okay, now I can react this way because I can see almost to, I mean, there's a spectrum in all of life, but like I think of autism in a way, if you kind of think of this sort of a more stereotypical traits of an autistic person. I mean, it's such a huge spectrum. It's not, you can't even, but in a way where it's someone who just kind of does what they're going to do, and it doesn't matter what everybody else outside of them is doing. They're going to do this thing. And it's certain, or really anyone who might not be super connected in certain ways with other humans, that this is a way that I'm not ultra connected to humanity. I have my own my own thing going. Anyway, that was a total
interesting though, like, because even though people are not going to pay a lot of money for a human design reading or anything, or even have to just don't even get it, whatever, not into that kind of stuff. I love the idea that each person is uniquely designed. Each person has their own journey of, like, basically getting to their self-love and self-worth and the true self, and it takes many forms. And I think the value of readings and that kind of stuff is, or coaching or whatever people do, is it just helps you kind of understand each of the phases so that you can move through them I'm not going to say faster, because sometimes fast is good, but sometimes it's just better, like deeper understanding. So I think it's valuable to talk about it, even if that's not something we continue to focus on. But I love talking about it because it was super useful when we were super into it. And now we're like, okay, good. And then
it's a fabulous tool. And it's definitely helped me understand myself so much better. And I was able to take what I learned and keep going. So
okay. Really, and then you were saying you wanted to talk more about conditioning, and then but you mentioned how human design relates to it, so we sort of clarified that. So then Do you remember what you were going to say?
Yeah, because yeah, I think because you were saying kind of your path, your journey to where how you've gotten to a place where you don't so much rely on the outside world anymore. And I love that. I think that it's true. I think, I too really, it's so hard to not compare yourself to as you're growing up. It's so hard to not compare yourself. And then you judge yourself. And then you end up judging other people. And they end up judging you. And it's like all this is like a life of judgment. And the interesting thing is we're conditioned to do that at a young age. It's like, oh, it's almost like even in school, think critically, you know, make choose sides, like, oh,
It's
you
a very
must
choose
be,
sides. Yeah, you
yeah, you
can't be
must be this
and.
or that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the truth is what we've learned is that this is an and existence. It's an and universe. There is no
Yes.
or. It's a yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
yes.
They're trying to force you to be, I mean, it's kind of like um people want you to pick political sides. You're like, I'm both or neither or a
Right.
mix. Like, leave me
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
What if I,
like
yeah,
don't tell me I have to pick a side. Don't tell me I have to pick
exactly.
a side in any kind of anything. Anyway, keep going.
No, it's interesting. You're right, because it almost for a while. I mean, I got a degree in diplomacy and international relations, and
Oh my
when I
God.
moved to DC, it's like if you're not choosing sides, if you're not having an opinion on literally everything, if you
Yeah.
aren't in the know, in all of these different political, groups, and it's like it's almost like you're either pick a side and all the things, or
Mhm.
you're ignorant and you're
Oh,
clearly living your own little bubble, and
yeah.
and it's like,
And you're less
wait,
valuable
and you're less
because,
valuable,
yeah.
right? And so and I've now, it took me a while to get to a place that I can proudly say I'm apolitical. Now, that said, that came out really judgy. I'm not saying that
Yes.
people who do decide to subscribe to,
Yeah.
like, it's not, I don't mean
Yes.
to come off that way.
Right.
For
And we
me, it didn't
accept
work.
all political sides just for all
Yeah,
political
it's not.
everything because it's a place where everybody gets really tense. And our job here
Yes.
at Flow Getter is to detense everything, right?
Yes.
It's to
Yeah.
release the tension.
Yeah.
So yes, I just wanted to
Yeah.
say that because it's more of like, you know, when you're trying to not be a judgmental person and then people start judging you, it's easy to start judging them back because our natural state is this sort of vulnerable love state. But I'm also a Scorpio. Apologies. So I'm
No,
sort of
it's
like, I'm super
beautiful.
loving and open. I mean, I've been like a 4-year-old. And then there was a point in my adulthood where I realized that I was like getting a lot of, I don't want to say attack, that's what, but just a lot of judgment. And that inner just ego was just like, it just wants to, and get all whatever. And I'm like, okay, I know you would love that inner ego. Like that's your favorite thing to go fight and defend. And it's Scorpio, it's very protective and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is that you're super protected when you don't need to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
When you
Yeah.
like that's your protection is your
Yeah.
complete peace with yourself.
Yep.
And we're all working on that. It's a
Yeah.
tricky thing because the ego convinces you,
Right.
you know.
So true.
Anyway,
Yeah.
back to what you were saying. I keep tangent.
No, I'm just babbling. No,
That's what the show is for.
babble away. No, this is great. I love it. I love the topic of, um, yeah, just kind of peace. And it's interesting. This makes me think of the present moment idea too, where in the present moment, anything that's negative, including judgment, just goes away because
Yeah,
there's just no room for it. There's no room for anything that's icky in the present moment.
there isn't.
Yeah.
So groovy.
Yeah, it's great.
How do you think? Okay, so we're talking about conditioning in this moment. It's conditioning in the present moment, right? Like, I want to get rid of my conditioning. Well, often you can jump from one set of conditioning just to another set of conditioning. Like you're just swapping sides, or okay, you say blue, I'm going to say green, whatever. So, but the present moment really allows you to get in touch with your inner truth And then you're beyond sides, you're beyond philosophies, you're beyond dogma, you're beyond theory, you're just
Yeah.
in truth.
I love
I feel like
that.
it's a really fast way to get out of conditioning. But as we all know, regular life is very distracting. It's really hard to be in the present moment. Um, and so obviously, I meditate every day, twice a day.
Cool.
It helps some days. Some days I cannot for the life of me. I can spend about 4 seconds tops in a present state, and other days it's super easy. What are some beyond meditation? Do you have any present moment strategies that you use that kind of free you from that conditioning?
I try. I mean, it is hard. It's interesting. Yeah. Well, I'll tell a little thing in a second, but yeah. One of the things I try to do is, we kind of talked about this in the last podcast, is focusing on, like, really, really just really getting more in tune with your present environment. So if you're like, and you said going out in nature is a really great, or like, I know that exercises, and you said exercise too, movement, because movement, I think there's so many reasons why movement is amazing, but one of them is it does keep your mind here.
Yeah.
It's like, it really does force it to be like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to move my leg now, or I have to do this position now, or I have to, like if you're running, it's like, okay, breathe, whatever it is, it really forces you to stay right where you are, which is fabulous tool. Nature is nice because it's like, oh, look at the bird over there, listen to sound. Yeah, it's just, it's like you really can tune in more to what's happening right in front of you. There's so many ways, but I think the key is to just tune into your environment right there, whatever you're choosing to do in the moment, because there's nothing, even if it's work and you're sitting there staring at a computer, just be there. If that's a choice you've made, then just be there. It's only painful. It's actually more painful when we think about working.
Yes. Or you're thinking
that
about
hurts.
the future, like, I have to do this thing because if I don't get it done, then this thing. You're not really focusing on the email that you're creating.
Yep.
You're focused on what happens if you don't get it done faster, or if you don't do it right, or if this other person doesn't say this, and then blah, blah, complicated
it's all futuring.
craziness. It's all futuring.
It's all futuring, or like, or just kind of, what's the word? Reflecting on what the meeting you just came out of, and how, oh my God, I was so bad, and whatever it is, you're not here, right here, even in a meeting. Yeah, you're just there in the meeting, and you're just sharing whatever ideas.
You're
it's
just
like,
with
it's
it.
It's
you're
easy.
Not like, oh my God, I got to do this thing. I want this person to hurry up, and I just want to say what I want to say because I got to get out of here because I got to do this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I was going to say is the reason we don't. Okay, so it all ties together. The reason we don't present moment is we don't prioritize how we feel, because if you checked in with how you felt when you're futuring and worrying and tensioning and stressing and not flow gettering, man. When you're go gettering instead of flow gettering.
I love it.
Yes. That you don't care how you feel.
Yeah.
Because if you tuned in, you'd be like, oh my God, I have a ball of tension and stress and I'm feeling zero joy. And then you go, well, I just got to quit this job, or I got to break up with this person, or do whatever. And it's like, but you're just, that habit of not being in the present moment is going to make you miserable, not the things necessarily. Sometimes you do have to quit the job and break up with the person, but it's like, have you tried being in the present moment and to see if you feel better being in the present moment, which the answer is always yes. Or if not, then make the change. But if you're like, oh, I'm just present while I'm doing this work thing, I'm not stressed. It's the second I start thinking about how behind I am, or how much I don't want to be working because I want to go do something else, so I want to hurry up and finish, then you've just made yourself miserable.
Absolutely.
And so how does that priority relate to the conditioning? Is we're conditioned to hurry up. We're conditioned to go fast. We're conditioned to have everything. We're conditioned to work harder in our jobs than in taking care of our health and our joy and our families and all this stuff. Like, all the messages from America, is where we live, it's not great at saying, you first, you prioritize you. There's this movie called Where to Invade Next. It's a Michael Moore movie. I'm not subscribing to Michael Moore as a person, but this movie was really, it was a documentary. It brought up how other countries have different, like 10 weeks of vacation mandatory in Italy or wherever, like all this good stuff. And so our country doesn't really prioritize like health and well-being very well. So if you're getting that conditioning and then you're trying to be in the present moment, and then you realize like, wow, these things are totally incompatible, it's really painful because you don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So it's better to go back into the chaos than to be like, okay, in this present moment, I want to make some big changes, but then you're like, oh my God, you're overwhelmed or all that kind of stuff. So it's easy to see how the conditioning perpetuates itself, and being out of the present moment perpetuates itself, and why it's so important to literally force yourself to be in the present moment, because but you don't have to force if you know how that being happy or being peaceful is it's the most important thing.
Yeah.
But yet we deprioritize it like crazy.
So true.
So it's your
so
choice. Essentially, it's your own choice to like, okay, do you want to be happy or do you want to choose the crazy? And, inside, not sometimes the outside doesn't have to change at all. So,
yeah. No,
okay, that was my soapbox.
I love that. I love that so much. You brought up a really good point about the speed and the quickness. And it is one other tactic is literally not just slowing down, but stopping. Because, I mean, if you think about really any analogy in the real world, if you're driving a car and you're speeding, you have a way higher chance of crashing into something. And then it's going to be devastating if and when you do, versus if you're going like 5 miles an hour. And even if you crash into something, the destruction isn't going to be nearly what it would have been at, 55 or 65 miles an hour. So yeah, slowing down, stopping, really just taking stock of what's going on inside and, gaining that awareness, because there is a time and a place for speed. But that's only when you are very clear and very aware of the direction you're headed in. Then you can speed up at times.
Yeah.
And then you slow down again and you retake stock, But I love that idea. You have to know when to push on the gas and when to push on the brakes.
Yeah. And as a generator, again, back to human design, I'm a just go, go, go. Like I always want to be going. Let's put it that way. And it's like having to slow down. I'm like, okay, relaxing. Yeah. Okay. But I want to be thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm like, no, what's it like? It's things you have to train yourself to do, just like you would train, a new skill of any kind. It's the same stuff. Okay, go ahead.
No, I've noticed that's great. It's a great, I've noticed that generators, the movement part is huge, bigger, even bigger than for non-generators, like the physical movement part. I noticed like even with my dad, he's a generator. And if he doesn't get his walks in, he's one of those who will sit there and like move his knee. You know what I mean? God. Like shake his knee under the table kind of thing. And then like the table's shaking and but he hasn't, like, wait, stop it, he's like, yeah, but it's because he hasn't released that. There's that go energy, but he's being forced to sit. And
we are energy. And like, that's the thing is like, it wants to cycle and do its thing. And we're like, no, sit there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. My kid's the same way. Like, it's like, no, it's hilarious. He is going to a school where he gets to choose like 2 or 3 electives per trimester. Mm-hmm. And all of them are PE classes.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, yes. And, before, maybe if I didn't know these things, I would have been like pushing the foreign language class or some of the other things, but that and cooking, because he loves to cook. But it's like PE, he's got a PE. I'm like, yes, because you need to get up and move around.
This could very well be a career for people like this, it where they just are into it. And that's I'm wholeheartedly jealous, because it's and also too, I'll say too, for people who are older, because let's say some of our listeners are 60s, 70s, even 80s years old. They're like, well, I can't, things hurt and stuff. And I realized that there's always at least one muscle of your body that you can move. Like, let's say your knees are shot. You can't do all these crazy exercises, but there's things you can do with not, let's say, not that joint, but there's other things that can be done.
Mhm.
And I think you have to get creative. You have to do some digging. You have to figure it out. It's not going to be handed to you on a platter, but it's possible because, as you know, my husband gets injuries from surfing and skateboarding, and you know, people have all kinds of weird. I was having foot issues, feet. I'm like, I wear good, like my feet were hurting, and I was like, oh my God, I can't run or walk. Like I have to walk the dog. I'm like, oh my God, this is really bad. And I thought, okay, there's always a way to you know, I mean, got some different shoes, sort of figure out some reasons why it was happening. But in the meantime, I was freaking out. I'm like, I'm only this young. How could this be happening? I'm not going to be able to do all this stuff. I'm like, you can still do yoga. You could still do Pilates. You're not on your feet at all. You can lay down and do various movements. There's different things, there is always a way, but it's that, oh my God, this thing hurts. I can't do anything. And, I'm the first to panic, so I get it. But for our older listeners, I think for me, everything comes back to this. And Erica, you taught me this, and I heard it from Abraham repeatedly, is that if you, how you feel needs to be the most important thing. And from there, it will generate everything. So feeling good is important to you, like really feeling good. It'll be easier to find a way to whatever thing it is you're looking for. But if that's not the priority, then you're following the priority of your ego. Your ego is like, well, we got to do this, and you got to figure this out. It doesn't want to be feeling good. That's not its job. Its job is safety and security. But your insides, your true insides, are the priority is feeling good. It's good for your health. It's good for your manifesting powers. It's good. It's literally the magic bullet is 75 and 70.
Say magic mullet.
I said bullet, which is bad. It is the magic mullet. So you put on a mullet and you're like, oh my God, my life is so better. And it's so funny. I don't want to say bullet at all. It's violent language. It is the magic wand. Thank you for clarifying. I'm glad it was a mullet. It was from a bullet
from
to
bullet
a mullet
to wand.
It's evolved in the space of 10 seconds. The magic wand is prioritizing feeling good on the inside, not because something unconditionally feeling good. And it's also conditional because I know if I exercise, it's a condition, I'm going to feel better. I know if I take the time to do X or Y or do whatever it is, it's still a condition, but it's making the choice to feel good anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing the condition or the thing or whatever, but you're just sitting there, nothing good is happening. And you're like, no, I'm just still going to choose. But that drives everything. And I have to say that until pretty recently, I wasn't very good at that. I wasn't letting that be the driver. It was my ego trying to be like, save you, secure you, make sure. It was just trying to project manage everything. And I'm like, thanks. And like feeling good needs to be the priority. And it's scary because you feel like you're going to lose everything. Your ego will convince you that you're going to get fired. You're going to get, whatever bad things are going to happen if you decide to just feel good and make the things that make you feel good be a priority. So it's really I think it's a paradigm shift, but it's also terrifying because your ego is it's going to convince you that is so the wrong choice. You've got to work harder. You can't just relax. You can't just make time for that. There's no way you can make time for that. I mean, you're so busy. It'll just go off. And you have to be like, I'm choosing this anyway. So, but this to me is how you awaken, is that you get yourself to a point where you can make that your priority. And it takes time.
Yeah, it does. And I will say, and it's only because I'm going through a thing right now where I'm feeling the heaviness of a situation that I'm in. And I will say that I 100% agree with everything you just said in terms of feeling good is a priority. Only when you know that, and only when you've embraced that, and only when you understand how manifestation works in terms of full empowerment, like you do all the creating, when you know all the things, then you can play around with the other emotions. In other words, when you're feeling, and I think, and I say that because I can see myself moving toward and moving towards something new. I think that emotions are a tool. They're a tool for humans. And I think, and they're just like everything else that exists, it's evolving. Yeah. And I feel like right now we get to use these different emotions, and we almost have to, because that's how we're built on that. That's kind of we're built on this idea of feeling, because that's how we create things. So we have to use them. Yeah. And when we try to stuff feelings that we're like, oh, I have to feel good, I'm not supposed to feel icky or whatever. It's not that you're not supposed to. It's really, I mean, really, when it comes down to it, you're supposed to release, just release, release, release. But when you know how creation happens, you get better at getting to that good feeling place over time. Yeah. So if you're not there, just give yourself, that's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. So for me, like right now, I know that I will get to feeling consistently good again. I'm having this kind of up and down situation happening. And so I'm allowing myself to feel crummy. I'm allowing myself to feel victimy for a minute, knowing that that's not, it's like, it's okay, because I know that I'm going to bounce out of that because I'm releasing that. So I can, speaking of conditioning, I learned what it looks like to have feelings of victimhood. I learned what feeling sad, like I learned these things, and for good reason. And so I'm continuing to use those here and there, but not nearly the way that I used to use them, which is a huge, it's huge.
Almost like aware victimhood or aware rage.
Wake up, woke. It's like woke victimhood. Woke rage.
Yeah, I'm woke, but yet I'm full of blame.
Woke blame.
It's woke blame. But I think it's important to let it come through you. Yeah, it's not, and I think that's a really good point. It's not about, okay, be happy all the time. It's more about prioritize feeling good. And sometimes the way to feel good is to let yourself go through that gamut of feeling around a certain situation. Or let's say you're healing an old trauma, or you're like, God, I just can't get past this. And then you're just like, well, because my dad this, or whatever, like there's something where you're like, you need to work through something, and the emotion, I subscribe to the Abraham thing, where the emotion is a signpost that your beliefs are pointed in a different direction than the way source or the universe sees it. And so then you're like, okay, fair. Yeah, my belief is that this person sucks and they did this thing to me, or whatever, or you're mad at yourself or whatever, but just blame and anger and frustration, right? All right. So I can then go in this sort of woke way of working through the feelings is, okay, I see that I'm there. I'm going to have the feeling, and we'll see what the feeling feels like in my body. And then I'm going to say, okay, what are the beliefs that are driving these emotions that I'm having? Like in my case, I'll just pick a few. It's usually, I'm not good enough. I don't believe in myself. This person, I wanted to connect with them and they just were being dumb and wouldn't be, why couldn't you be better? If you'd been better, it would have, like, why couldn't you be more aware? like I didn't get what I wanted, and it's obviously your fault because I'm totally perfect. And, so I can sort of see the beliefs that go with, Erica's covering up the microphone, so you can't hear her gulp. And so the beliefs are, it's such a good microphone. The beliefs are, the emotions are there to tell you what your beliefs are. And the beliefs are usually things that are not true, or things that are basically making you, like the universe isn't going, yeah, you are so lame and so dumb and whatever. It's never, And the universe isn't telling you you aren't capable, and the universe isn't telling you that you'll never figure it out. And like it's basically highlighting your false beliefs that you're having, right? So, which is really great tool. They're signposts essentially. And it's not to say you shouldn't feel them, because I do think there's a certain way of feeling lets it move through you as an energy being. So when you're kind of, because you're pretty consistently, like I've noticed, like the sort of feeling good place is more important to you than all the gottas, outside of your duties as a mother and a caregiver and all these other things that you're in, coworker and all those things. And so when you're going through these periods that are a little more woo, up and down on the sea, like, how do you feel the conditioning plays a part with those? Do you feel like, are the things that coming out, like, what's the connection?
Yeah, it's interesting. So to give a little more context, it's for me, I tend to, things that hit me hardest tend to come in the relationship sector. And so when a relationship ends in a way that I didn't necessarily want it to, then I get these feelings. And the conditioning, it's interesting. I know we were just talking about this, but I was saying how I grew up in an environment with parents who really kind of were the storybook fairy tale type of relationship. Like they were very close. I mean, really, so growing up seeing that, I just kind of, you adopt this idea of what that's supposed to look like for you. Because there were no, to the extent to which I never saw my parents fight. I never saw, like, I didn't see it. They hid that stuff from us, but they really didn't have much to fight over. My dad, it just, I don't know. They were really, truly best friends. And you could see that. So I had this really like, and I didn't know it because I didn't realize that none of my friends had this experience, and nobody else that I really knew had.
Yeah, aren't all parents totally?
Yeah, perfect.
No.
Close to it. Right. Yeah. I didn't know that. So, but I'm the kind of person that I try, well, who knows? Who knows what my future looks like? But it's hard it's been difficult because there is that conditioning where I really thought that that's what my path was supposed to look like. And even when I realize that that's not what it's going to look like, it's still hard to let that conditioning go because it's been with me my whole life.
Right.
And so, so I know that consciously, but I know that in each relationship that I have, it's like I'm chipping away at that idea that it has to look a certain way. And I consciously know that, but I have not quite embodied that belief quite yet.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point, because what do you think the difference between the conscious piece and the embodiment piece? How does that, in the past, where have you been successful with that, where you had a new idea and then over a period of time you saw it be embodied? So like go backwards, maybe bring us back in time to a different topic completely. And were you able to see how that worked? From, okay, conscious awareness, I want to change this. And then you embodied it and then you started living it. And what was that process like?
Oh my gosh.
Because I know, I know, if you can't think of it, but I know I've known you for a long enough period of time where I know I've seen you transform.
Yeah.
But I think only we can know kind of like, I was thinking this, and then the mind frame changed.
Oh,
you embody it, and then your life changed. Like where you kind of started living the wisdom in an area maybe outside the relationship sector.
So that's so maybe one thing that, so I was very, in school I did well. I got like
you got your grades.
I got the grades. I did well in college. I graduated, whatever it is, the middle magna cum laude, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, you got Latin words.
I got Latin words. I did well. I mean, I wasn't like the top ever, but I was in the top like quarter of always, but that's because I learned that working hard was payoff. You had to work hard. You had to, just do all the things. And that kind of, the traditional kind of schooling does not fit the way that I'm built. I would go and I would just memorize a bunch of things, take the test, ace the test, and then all the information would fly to my head. Like
Yes.
I don't remember anything, right?
Right.
So, or from that perspective. As I got older and then I had a kid, and then I had to find schools for him, and then I kind of saw who he is, which is very different from me. I would say he does better naturally in school. Like he has a very sharp memory, so it doesn't take as much effort for him.
Yeah.
But he's not interested, and that's okay. And so I'm like, yeah. And so what I've learned is that I just, I even tell him, I'm like, straight up, dude, just pass.
You got it.
Just get the diploma. We're good. And I kind of, and this is more recent, because if I had known these things when he was really young, I would have put him in a whole different kind of school.
Right.
And I'd give him the option, but he kind of gets angry with me because he's very much a people person. He gets very connected and like, so he does not want to leave his friends. If he has to leave his friends, it's like the worst thing ever for him. Yeah. So he would rather just go to the traditional kind of schooling. It's a slightly less, I mean, schools have gotten way better than when we were young, but, right. But I mean, it's more project-based learning versus like all these separate different classes, but which is good. But in any case, point being, I feel like I am so on board with, I don't need you to work hard. I've let go of that. Like working hard it's like I grew up in an environment where, because my parents were like first generation immigrant, like mm-hmm. they, and so the hard work and little pay was a thing.
Yeah. And it's also ancestral energy that's come through your being, because we're all tied to our ancestral energy. So it sounds like you went from being a go-getter to a flow-getter. And I'm going to add this that you maybe not have mentioned, which was, I remember that we had both, like, our company closed down, and I was like, I gotta get a job, and I was like, looking for that 40-hour week kill me thing, and you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of and you basically manifested always enough money, infinitely less hours of work, and checks were coming to you from this and that, like out of the blue, things you didn't even expect. So it was like, when you chose, I'm not going to work hard anymore. You actually, and I was so jealous too. I was like, like, she's not doing anything and she's getting money and she's happy and she's relaxed. That bitch. And you basically maintain that. There's been times of harder effort and less, but overall, like, you don't have the I'm bloody exhausted and I'm working too hard, kind of thing. I love it. Like, you're not doing that. And so I would say that you made a great transformation you chose a mindset, you started living the wisdom, and then you got the results, which is going from go-getter to flow-getter, for sure. And that, I'm certain we've all done this, you, me, and everybody listening has all done this in our lives. And I think it's important to kind of go back and visit how that works. Yeah. You're like, I knew it resonated, I committed, I started living it, and then I wasn't afraid of the consequences because I knew it to be true inside myself, and then the outside started looking pretty great. And then you maintained it. And so, like, we've all done that. It's just that we can't do that in our struggle sectors because we've got so much emotional baggage in there.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so, but it's like, let's say you can do that go-getter to flow-getter, or, shift the mindset and then embody and then live it thing. Well, if you go back and you really think about your whole life and times you've just done that, you could probably come up with like 20 things. And then you go, okay, so what if I can't do it in this stupid sector of my life that's driving me crazy? Yet. Or maybe it's multiple sectors. Maybe it's all of the sectors, like everything's screwed up. There's still ways that the person has transformed because you've changed your mindset and it changed your life, essentially, when you were able to embody it. And then the one that, like you said, the yet, right? The other one, it's like, okay, so all that's really getting in the way of that is a whole bunch of emotional resistance. And that's where you're going to have your feelings and journal and get coaching and whatever it is that is going to help you work through that. But just know that you
You've
can
done it
release all that.
before.
You've done it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
This
You can
is
do it
you.
again. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it might take, I mean, I can't tell you how long some things in my life have taken me. And I'm like, this is not, it's, and you're just like, duh, it could have been so simple. It's just your, I'll call it your hot zones, right? Where you're just like, oh, that, you know. But regardless, the whole point is that you, listener, and me and Erica, we're all capable of this amazing transformative energy that's just right there for us. And, you know, like just feel the empowerment, even if you're not there on practically every sector of your life. There's at least one sector of your life where you are this empowered person. Even if it's just the smallest fraction of your life, you still have this, and it can expand because the universe always wants the expansion of awesome. It's not trying to expand the shit. It's trying to expand the awesome. And you can allow that. So go get them, Tiger. Hearts. Yay. Any other deep thoughts about anything before we close today, Dr. Tafoya?
Oh my gosh, always, but we'll save it for another podcast. This is great. This is a great stopping point.
Yay. Well,
Yeah, thank
I
you.
just loved our conversation today. I think we really covered some cool stuff, and I always love re-listening to these. And for listeners out there, let us know everything you think about all the things we said. We are always interested in hearing what you think. And thank you for listening and being with us today. So, of course, go to flowgetter.com and do all the things and subscribe and all, you know what we want, right? Just be a part of but it's not what we want. Is we love having the community that these podcasts bring people together, brings us together with you, which is fun because we love connecting with like-minded people. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.